This is
The setup is ready to roll.
if only everybody just saw what we went through to set this up.
Oh yeah, I mean, between the cameras, the situation here, we finally got a TV here. We're rolling, man.
Yeah, we don't have a Jamie like Joe Rogan does, but we'll get there.
We'll get one.
Day.
We will absolutely get one. We're 100%. I mean, it's time, right? It's like it takes time, and this is like I'm sure the way that everybody else feels when they started setting this thing up, but. It's exciting, man. It's exciting.
This fires me up. Seeing the cameras, makes you be in front of the camera.
It's the evolution, and we'll be in different times, in different spots like this too, right? We're going to be in situations where we are going to still be on Zoom or Riverside, and there'll be times where we're in person, and there'll be times where you just might hear audio in some adventures of it. So, but we're going to try and get as consistent as we possibly can with the video.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the video, and I think a lot of people are.
Yeah.
There's always that Spotify crowd. I'm one of them. I like Spotify, I like listening, but video's fun. Adds another dynamic.
It does. It's the dynamic that I think everybody's looking for in some degree, because people have an attachment just to like the person. They want to put a face to a name,
right?
And that's a good thing, right? That's the way that we all just kind of deal with that as humans. We're trying to be able to see who is saying the things that they're saying. Do they look like the person that should be saying the things that they're saying? And so it's a cool thing. But weekend, talk to me about it.
Yeah, happy Monday.
Happy
what a weekend.
Monday.
Little sad weekend for me personally. We had UFC 293, if we're jumping into that.
Yeah, let's jump into it.
Off the rip. Shameless plug real quick, Tough Talk MMA. We did a full breakdown on it.
Like, you subscribe. Wherever you get your podcasts, go listen to Tough Talk MMA.
Yeah, so full breakdown on Tough Talk MMA of just MMA, obviously in the name, but UFC 293, arguably one of the greatest upsets in title fight history. Sean Strickland outclassed Israel Adesanya. Not only outclassed him in his own department of striking.
Right.
Man, that was a tough one for me because I base my game off Israel Adesanya. I've been a
Really?
fan of him.
I actually never asked you about who you try to base your game off
So
of.
I was an Izzy guy in his kickboxing realm, and his body type and my body type, for my weight class at least, are very similar.
Right.
I'm a lot longer usually than
Longer,
the other.
lanky,
Yep. So that whole city kickboxing feint game and the length, I emulate my striking game off Israel Adesanya. I will wrestle, which he doesn't, like to do.
Right.
But
he will if he has to.
Well, he should have, but that's another story.
Well, that's what we've talked about in the past, too, about fighters where they get into situations and then the game plan kind of goes awry.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what you saw with him.
Yeah, I've never seen him like that, at least in the UFC. He looked, I don't know if he was injured or what. He was flat. He didn't have an answer, and Sean Strickland took it to him. Congrats to Sean Strickland, because he's something else. He's an enigma.
Yeah, I did want to get into him later about, some of the things that he did, but let's get just to the fight itself. I didn't get a chance to watch it until the next day. And one of the things that was so interesting about when you're watching it the next day and you kind of hear about it, it's one of those sports where you can't imagine it happening, right? Like it's, in football, if you see a game and, somebody won 38-13, and then you think about who they're playing and the team that just, played each other and the quarterbacks and the Giants yesterday, Cowboys and the Giants. There's a path to them getting blown out by the Cowboys. There was also a path for the Giants to beat the Cowboys. But if you saw that they lost, you would have been surprised.
Yeah.
The fact that Izzy lost to Sean Strickland is not only surprising, but then you had to go see what happened.
Yeah, see how it happened. Like, a loss is a loss, but a loss in that fashion, nobody's predicted that. You couldn't predict that. Who thought Sean Strickland would go out there and outclass Izzy in the striking department? Didn't use one singular feint of a takedown.
Right.
Didn't threaten it, not one bit. Rocked him on the feet. Sean Strickland is the only person in the UFC to ever drop Israel. Alex Pereira TKO'd him, but he never dropped him.
Did Robert Whittaker drop him?
No. Robert Whittaker didn't do anything against him, really. Never hurt him, didn't rock him. Gastelum rocked him, didn't drop him. So Sean Strickland has the only technical knockdown against Israel Adesanya.
Really? Technical knockdown, okay.
So, you can rock somebody and they can stay on their feet. Izzy got rocked against Gastelum, but he hit the fence before he hit his butt on the floor. Sure. So, technical knockdown, Sean Strickland's the only one.
Sean Strickland, man. and we talked about the middleweight division as well, and it was the middleweight division, and we talked about the light heavyweight division.
I think we talked lightweight, no? Was
Lightweight division, I'm sorry. Yeah, lightweight.
It was lightweight.
And we talked about the middleweight as well, and that we need something else for Izzy. We needed something else, and that's why Pereira got the fast track, right? And now he lost that fight, then Pereira goes up, right, to lightweight. And so really interesting light heavyweight. I'm sorry, he went to light heavyweight. And really interesting kind of scenario with Izzy where there was probably other people who could have gotten Izzy than Sean Strickland.
Yeah.
But that's, I think, where the genius of kind of sometimes the UFC matchmakers comes in, where they figure out there's something here, and it's interesting. And I don't think Sean Strickland beats him again.
I don't know, really.
But I actually don't know.
It makes it interesting. Like, I would like a rematch, and we talked about it me and RJ talked about it yesterday. We kind of came to the agreement that we don't want an immediate rematch. We would like to see contender Izzy get back into the contender pool. Fight maybe Dricus Duplessis. That one makes it more exciting, in my opinion, than just having Dricus fight Izzy for the title. Now it's a number one contender fight, which is even more pressure.
It's more compelling. It's more pressure. It's more, can he get back to the top again? And I don't know if you ever see guys get back to the top less often in MMA.
Yeah. I mean, there's outliers who have done it.
Right.
But once you start going on that slide down, it's a tall order to come back from.
Yeah, it is. It is a tough order, and I think it's only because the fighters are getting better, and I think that the battle to get back to the top has to be based off of your matchups, right? Like, he could get some bad matchups moving forward of guys who finally saw the weaknesses or think that now they put a battery in their back almost. Like, this is a good thing that Sean Strickland did for the middleweight division, right? Because they're looking at him like, I can't believe he was able to accomplish this, but he went into it like, there's no way I'm going to lose. And so he obviously had a process of, there's a chance I lose this fight. Like, of course, you go into every fight, there's a chance. But he was the most aggressive fighter against Izzy. Cannonier wasn't aggressive. No. Brunson wasn't aggressive. No. There were just guys who weren't fighting their fight and didn't go into it with the mentality of, I'm going to either die or I'm going to win. Right. And he went into it like, I don't care what happens. And I want to ask you this too. Sean Strickland said at the end that he talked about a little bit of his childhood trauma. And it was a really fascinating conversation because of the fact that he said that he loves MMA. This is the best sport in the world. And even despite the head injuries, the fighting aspect of it, the potential injuries all over the place, I think it is an amazing sport. But do you think some of the childhood traumas make him feel like every time he goes out there that like it's kind of just like a war in a way? Like he's fighting so many other things except just the fight?
Right. Yeah, I think that's absolutely a factor in his mindset. Obviously we all know him to be a little bit of a loose screw up top.
He's a wild dude.
He's very unfiltered. He's very polarizing.
For sure.
Which is why a lot of people love him. And he went on Joe Rogan and really put out a story about his childhood that hasn't really been seen before. Right. So now we all kind of have...
Guys pour into Joe Rogan. They pour it out. They give Joe Rogan every piece of them. Because he's just that type of guy, though.
Yeah, he is, and they know the platform that this is their chance to get their story out. So,
right.
They're going in there knowing they're talking to a lot of people.
Right.
So
100%.
But he was able to put out his story. Everybody kind of now sees what childhood he has and sees the things he went through. That definitely plays into going into an octagon and fighting another man. I think he also went on record in an interview to say he had a motorcycle accident in 2020, and I think he broke his neck. He almost died.
Really?
He got real bad injured, and he came back saying that getting into the octagon is like, I don't know how he described it, but he had a new appreciation for life
Sure.
that he didn't have before, especially coming from his background where it was abuse and all the other things. So I think more so than his childhood trauma, the motorcycle accident that he suffered gave him a new appreciation for life and not just being a fighter, which freed him up in the octagon, in my opinion.
Does MMA have more stories like this than other sports, you think? Like, do you think this is the most singularly, how can I say this? Do you feel like MMA has such a massive importance on individuality that, like, there's always a story? Like, I don't know anybody who just went into MMA because of, they just decided that they really liked this. They grew up with both parents. They enjoyed their situation, and they just said, you know what? I think I really like MMA. Like, I think that there's always some story attached to it.
Yeah, I mean...
It's pretty interesting.
It is very interesting. If you boil it down, it's two people fighting each other in a fist fight where everything goes, and it's simulating fighting back in the Coliseum to the death in front of all these fans.
Right.
So to even consider that as a career, you have to either have a rough upbringing where all you did was fight, or your situation that you had kind of forced you into this lane where it was fight or flight, and a lot of these guys choose fighting.
Right.
And it's almost like an outlet. You know, a lot of people have their things that they go to release things.
Right.
And it just so happens that fighting is one of these things. Yeah,
I think fighting is the violence, but also the maturation process of fighting. You know, I used to actually feel bad for fighters when I started watching MMA, when I was like, this guy's getting smoked, or he's getting knocked out, and how's that look for his family? How's that look for his friends?
It's not good.
Do you want to pick it up?
You might need to check it. Yeah, it's back on.
It's back on. So, do you feel like the maturation process of it is so interesting that, like, the way that the fighters perceive fighting, like, I've never seen a sport like that where you can get knocked out and just be fine with it. And not necessarily fine with it in the way of, like, I'm cool with getting knocked out, but, like, that it happens. And that it's such an interesting thing. And I think that's a mentality.
It is. And the only thing I can compare it to, because I have experience, is like a pitcher giving up a home run is almost inevitable. Like, as a pitcher, you're going to give up a home run to someone that's better.
Actually, never gave up a home run in my life.
Okay, well,
however,
we have an outcast.
But it is at least giving up hits.
Yes.
Right, giving up hits, getting shelled in some regard. Like, those are parts of the game that just occur. You know, and, you can't avoid that.
Like, so that's not head trauma where you're taking blows to the brain and doing
it's not
brain damage like fighting is, but it's still something that you have to accept even if you don't like it. And it just so happens that getting knocked out is part of the game, and if it happens to you, you kind of just accept it. You're not happy about it.
Where do you think that logic came from, though?
You know, fighting stems back to, like, before we can even think about it.
Right.
Like, humans have been fighting each other in hand-to-hand combat for as long as we've been around.
Right.
Even, you know, the apes and the other animals of the animal kingdom, everybody fights. It's just nature.
Yeah, just how, where, and when, and for what.
This one just so happens to be sanctioned and kind of protected as much as it can be, but it's still a fight, and they're getting paid for it.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's some draw to it.
You think Dana White secretly loves this stuff?
Dana White loves this.
He loves when champions lose.
No, I don't think this time around. Izzy's been his cash cow. He doesn't want Izzy off the throne. Even though Sean Strickland pulled numbers in his post-fight Octagon interview.
Yeah.
He had $2.2 million in a day. Sean O'Malley got like $500,000 in 3 weeks. So I think Sean Strickland's a bigger star than Sean O'Malley, if I'm being honest.
Really? Okay.
At least
just from you know, if we're looking at it from a prisoner of the moment type of thing, like, I think that he definitely drew a bigger crowd, and he drew a bigger audience from his story, right? Because I feel like that's the thing. Like, a Sean O'Malley feels like, I feel like his story doesn't reflect the perception of him.
No, his story's not as intense as Strickland's at all.
And nor does it need to be.
No,
it doesn't have to be, but it's interesting when it is.
It is.
Yeah.
But, Sean O'Malley went down the path of, let me get this colorful hair, look like Tekashi 6ix9ine with the face tats and all of this. So that's his lane. Sean Strickland's lane is, I'm just going to say whatever into this thing, and whatever comes out, comes out.
And it works. And it works like a charm. And that's where, like, you got to sell a fight. He sells a fight.
He's sold that one.
He will sell a fight.
Yeah.
He will sell a fight. And I think that was the problem with Khabib. I think people wanted Khabib to start selling fights. And then that McGregor situation, it looked like he did sell the fight, but he lost a little bit of himself.
I don't even think he was selling the fight. It was all
He
genuine.
just hated him.
It was all genuine in that one. They just hated each other.
Yeah, he truly hated him.
You saw some emotion out of him. But just before we get off the MMA topic,
Sure.
have to shout out Sean Strickland's head coach, Eric Nixick.
Okay.
He's head coach at Couture MMA. This guy has a track record and is becoming one of the best coaches of all time.
Okay.
Coached Francis Ngannou to beat Cyril Gane, who was at the time the best striker anybody's ever seen in the heavyweight division.
Okay.
Sean Strickland, he was plus, 500 in that one?
Right.
Just the track record he has. He coaches Dan Ige, all these other guys. That guy's becoming one of the best, and he's a mastermind of the sport.
We can go back to that question of who are the best coaches in MMA.
You have to put Eric Nixick in this conversation, especially after last weekend.
And that's kind of such a cool part about sports where, like, right place, right time, right people, right? Yeah. That's a part of the right place, right time kind of formula of imagine if Sean Strickland never met Eric Nixick.
Yeah.
And then they didn't work together to get to this fight, right? And who knows where he'd be at. And you just hope that you in this sport, you hope that in any sport really, you hope that you meet the right people along the way. I can't even describe to you the impact that my coaches had on me at the time that I was where I was. Yeah. And so going into even certain events, it decides if you're going to be a winner, right? It decides if you're going to be a winner or a loser. And, it's not going to work out or it will. And so that's where I feel like in a lot of times it's black and white, who you meet and how you meet them and when it happens. Yeah. It's a fascinating thing in sports.
It is. So just had to give a warm shout out to
shout out to Eric Nixick too.
Yeah, he's
I think.
One of the best. Sticking on the track of sports, I know
Sure.
It was week 1, right? Now, before we get into any football here, I'll put the question out. I don't watch football.
Okay.
I'll watch highlights, but from an outsider's point of view, I know you watch your football. How do you get someone into football? How do you get someone to sit down for an entire Sunday and watch football? Coming from someone who doesn't. I would love to know.
It's a good question, and I think you had to be grandfathered into the game from an early age. If you didn't start watching it early, you probably won't watch it now. It doesn't mean that there's not exceptions to the rule. People will start watching the sport as they get older, or they'll start having a better appreciation for it. I think you could say the same thing about MMA, right? Is how could you get me to watch guys punch each other in the face? Which I think for everybody, that's some sort of the combativeness of it all. People will watch it because it's so primal and that it makes you feel alive in some way. But there's a lot of times where how do you get a woman to watch MMA, right? Outside of the fact that most women don't even understand what's happening in women's MMA, right? So in that same thing, I think it takes some time. You got to watch. You got to appreciate the sport. And it's a sport that is a little bit more complex than just you get the football, you hand it to somebody, and you throw it. It seems simple, but the scheme, the coaching staffs, the players in that particular scheme, it's a very interesting game, and it can become very nuanced. And if you live in nuance, that's why I think baseball players gravitate toward football, because there is a little bit of a nuanced aspect to it that you could do a lot of things right and still fail in football. That being said, from an entertainment standpoint, I don't know if there's a better product out there from an entertainment aspect. We talked about that last episode, but week 1 was pretty good. I'd give it about an 7.5 out of 10. I can't give it an 8. I think if there was an 8, you would have saw some better quarterback play. You probably would have saw some, with the exception of some games like Miami versus LA Chargers was unbelievable. That game was a 39-34 game, complete shootout, exactly what you want to see. Joe Burrow looked horrible yesterday, who just got paid $55 million a year to be the quarterback for the Bengals. So many little oxymorons kind of happen in the game. Is like how this guy gets paid so much and didn't play well week 1. How Baker Mayfield, who's been a journeyman so far and was a number 1 pick in the league and, a few years back, and now he figured it out with the Buccaneers in a new situation that they're supposed to be rebuilding, and then they go in and beat the Vikings, who are a contender for their division. They're not as good as I don't think they're as good as not the Vikings. I'm sorry, the Vikings aren't as good as the Packers, and they're not as good as the Lions. That being said, it's still a pretty good division, and they lost to the Buccaneers. So things happen. I got the Jets game tonight as well.
Monday Night Football.
It's a crazy, crazy thing in the Northeast right now. The Giants got absolutely hammered, got boat raced by the Cowboys 40-0. Scoring 0 points in the NFL is like impossible. With the rule changes, with everything going on, it's insane to lose 40-0. That being said, you love to see a Giants loss if you're a Jets fan like myself.
Yeah.
So, Jets game tonight. We're going to boat race the Bills.
Is that
Book it now.
You guys are supposed to boat race the Bills?
No, we're actually underdog.
Oh, okay.
But Aaron Rodgers is a 6-1-1 in his career on an opening game as an underdog.
He's an interesting cat, by the way.
He's an interesting cat.
I watched it's the Sunday conversation.
I think you'd gravitate toward him a little bit.
I think I did because I watched that Sunday conversation with
Caleb Presley.
Yes,
He's
with
hilarious.
Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers is an interesting cat.
He is an interesting cat, and I think his situation was so tough in Green Bay because I think he's been there for so long. It was a bad relationship. It started to become a bad relationship. It was a great one for a while, won the Super Bowl, and then since there he hasn't gone back. And the issue with him being there with the way that the team was working out was they weren't getting him the players that he needed. So players that he needed, meaning like his weapons, all the things that he could use, wide receivers, tight ends, running backs. He finally got some running backs, but never really got the wide receivers right outside of Devontae Adams, who is an unbelievable wide receiver, but they only usually had just one guy. So he struggled with that, and I think that his drug use, his little bit of a brash, a little bit of abrasive. He can be a little arrogant at times when he was there. He's not that guy right now, and he could turn into that guy. Yeah. I don't know, right? He could totally turn into that person. That being said, he's been pretty good. He's been a really good teammate, and he was in the dark place, with doing ayahuasca. And say what you want about, people who do the psychedelics and the drugs. Not for me but neither. I get it. I get the thing that people like to do that. So, but it's interesting that he does it because he is a football player, and he is a really, really smart guy. Went to Cal. He's been on Jeopardy. That doesn't make you a smart guy. It just makes you a pretty intelligent person for that particular show. But by and large, Aaron Rodgers is a pretty smart guy, and he's been kind of ahead of the curve on certain things. And he's just an interesting person. He's a really fascinating person. I think that he's one of the Aubrey Marcus types of guys, living life to the fullest in trying to visualize and see the future, but also live a full life from doing the drugs to making sure you can see the afterlife to a degree, all those little things that happen. And it's a really interesting thing, and there's a place for that in society, but it's just crazy that it's a place for that as an NFL quarterback who's already had this image. So he's an interesting guy, and I appreciate who he's been to the league, and I hope that he's good this year.
I hope so, too.
Yeah.
I'm going to pause. So, I had 2 questions in my head.
Okay.
I was debating which one to ask. This one is kind of on that same path of NFL quarterbacks.
Okay.
We all talk about – I'm leaving it.
Okay.
We all talk about how an NFL quarterback can kind of and number 1 pick can change a team, a franchise. How far can a star quarterback take a team that is overall not good. So, like, how good can a quarterback be with not such good offensive lines?
Great quarterback, average players.
Yes.
Depends, right? It depends. You rarely ever see really good quarterbacks take a bad team a long way without good players being there. Now, you can do it with decent players. You can do it with average guys as an anomaly, right? Like, I think Tom Brady did it often with average weapons in New England, right? Average weapons being bad to average wide receivers, average running backs, decent tight ends, but things that other teams had better weapons, right? Whether it was the Chiefs, whether it was the Bills, the Dolphins, the Steelers in those times, but he had a great O-line, he had a great defense, and he had a great coaching staff. So there's so many things you're going to need if you need to be at a high level as a quarterback who doesn't have a good team. It's actually easier to take a great team with an average quarterback, right? So Kyle Shanahan's been doing it for a long time with average quarterback play, but guys who understand his system with excellent weapons, right? Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel. Those are some of the best weapons in the league. Those are some of the best skill position guys. That being said, he's had Brock Purdy, who took him to an NFC Championship game, who then got hurt. Jimmy Garoppolo took him to a Super Bowl and didn't get – they were there. They should have won. They could have won. But Patrick Mahomes is there, and he played unbelievable, and those are things that happened. I mean, last year was probably the best, most talented Super Bowl we got in a really long time with the Eagles and the Chiefs. I don't think you're going to get a more – talented Super Bowl. There's Pro Bowl guys and all pro guys at every position.
Yeah.
And so that was a beautiful game. I mean, the Chiefs didn't have the best weapons, but they got the best guy in the league in Patrick Mahomes. He actually is an anomaly. He's unbelievable.
He is. If there's one person I am very aware of in football, it's Patrick Mahomes,
right,
and what he's done. So I was watching college football the other day, right? Because I'm trying to get into Tennessee football just in case, because
you might be down there.
Might be down there, so I'm trying to get into Tennessee football. I know they're supposed to be good this year.
Yes.
Opening day for them, I don't even know who they played, to be honest. I forget. But the announcer said something about the opposing team, and their kicker on the opposing team was like 34 years old. What is going on in college football?
34 years old.
Where we have – why do we have a
Let's
grown
check
man?
that. I want to check that.
I promise you they said that. I would have not said it if I wasn't sure. I am 100% sure they said that.
34 years old.
So either they were wrong or that guy's 35.
I've seen guys who are like 25, 26. That's a real thing.
Like, what is that? Sixth year senior, 25, 26? That's even more than sixth year.
I'd be like 8.
So why did they allow that?
The COVID year happened. You do have eligibility for a long time. Injuries do happen. I don't know how many red shirts you can get, but I'm sure they bend the rules for football guys. Yeah. Being able to have a 25, 26, or 27-year-old. Stetson Bennett was 25 last year, playing in the national championship game. So things like that do happen. 34 is insane.
I mean, he was a kicker, so it's not like he was a quarterback or anything. But
yeah, but still, like, that's a little nuts.
I don't know how I feel.
34 years old is wild.
Why do we have grown men playing in a college game? I mean, to be fair, they're grown men at 21,
that
22.
Shouldn't have happened, and if that did, then that was a complete mess up, and there's a problem in that they are breaking rules.
Okay,
there's got to be a rule that's being broken if he's 34.
So that's not the norm.
I have no idea, but that's wild.
Look it up. Someone look it up. I promise they said it.
Yes.
So
put it in
that's
the comments.
not normal.
Put it in the comments.
So that's not normal, is what you're saying.
No,
okay.
It's not
Just
normal.
sure.
That being said, a lot of the guys with the COVID years, a lot of guys who had red shirts plus COVID years, you're going to see some 24, 25, and 26-year-olds who then end up getting to the league a little later. There was Brandon Whedon was probably the oldest player that I remember. I forget what school it was that he was at. Maybe it was at Houston or Ball State or whatever it was. He was 27 as a quarterback.
I
don't know what happened along the way. I don't know if he decided he wanted to play. 3 years after college and then decides to get his degree. I have no idea. But you will see that from time to time. The college game's getting interesting, too. I think it's getting a little bit more closer to the NFL based off the rule changes. And I love them. I personally love them because they move the chains on first down, and they did a good job of making sure that now the clock keeps moving.
We were talking about that.
That's what we want.
Last time, right? Pace of play?
Yes. The pace of play has been great. It's also getting more NFL-like from the athletes. The guys are closer to becoming NFL players than they're not, right? So, it used to be where the college player had to also develop once they got to the NFL. And there's some rookies, obviously. There's always been rookies that have played really, really well. That being said, there still was a gap from a physicality standpoint. There is no gap anymore. College players at 18, 19, and 20 years old can go to the league if they wanted to. Travis Hunter could be playing in the NFL right now from a physicality standpoint and the things that he does on the field. He's only 20 years old. He could be playing in the league right now, 100%. Shedeur Sanders, from outside of the processing of the speed, the decision making and the size that he has is there. He can play. And same thing, Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams could have been playing in the league 2 years ago with how good with his physicality as a quarterback. So that's already there, and I think that's a testament to the strength and conditioning, to the new science that's out there, but also you're starting to see a lot of injuries. Even though the science is telling us that the players are stronger than ever, they're faster than ever, and they're jumping higher, and they're as athletic as they'll ever be, right? And you say that every year, right? Every year, this game's better than it's ever been. The UFC every year has the best fights it's ever had, and it always continues to get better and one up itself, right?
Yeah.
And that's from an anticipation. That's from that's from some luck, right? And that's from the people buying in, I think, a little bit to that too. But from an athletic perspective, the players are as athletic as I've ever seen.
Why do you think there's so much injuries, or at least more than you're used to? Because I think
it's the specificity of the sport. Sometimes I think guys get very specific in their sport early. I do believe that you should be playing another sport in your off season if you can, but once it becomes a job and it becomes I think we've talked about this too. If you're a college athlete at any level, 1, 2, 3, JUCO, NAIA, it does not matter. If you're trying to play this game at a high level, whether it's football, basketball, hockey, soccer, lacrosse, it's a job. And once you start embracing that, you don't really have another chance to get another job, right? It's not you going into the all season and going, I'm a lacrosse player, so I'm going to go play basketball. It's very rare that you're going to see the two-sport athlete. But the two-sport athlete, like a Deion Sanders, rarely got hurt, right?
Yeah.
Bo Jackson, with the exception of him playing football and him having that thing what happened with his hip and him, breaking his leg, he was a pretty healthy athlete in the baseball realm.
Yeah.
And in the football realm, he had some freak injuries that I think happened. But I'm take away the freak injuries, right? Breaking a leg, breaking an ankle, somebody rolls on your leg in a football game, a baseball hits you in the face in a game, like a Giancarlo Stanton type of thing. Those are freak injuries. Those are things that you can't mitigate. We're seeing a ton of guys with pulled hamstrings, torn meniscuses, torn UCLs. Jason Dominguez just tore his UCL. And it's kind of like a formality almost. It's just things that we expect some of these things to happen. I never pulled my hamstring playing, 100 games in a year.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying I'm playing 162 of them, but things happen, right? And in a football game, I think yesterday we had probably, from the red zone that I was watching, I probably saw about at least 20 injuries in an hour and a half span.
That's outrageous.
It's a lot of guys getting hurt.
That's crazy for one day. So would you, in the trend of sports and kids coming up,
right?
Do you? Because I don't know if I follow enough trends or the sports world coming up for the kids. Do you see more specialization athletes that are only playing one sport, or do you see more kids trying to play multiple sports?
Yes, you do. You definitely see people playing one sport and trying to specialize in that because they understand how hard it is to be good at this point. I do think sports at the highest level are better than ever. Like, if you're looking at baseball right now, the average fastball went up to 94.4. And it used to be 92.5 about 8 years ago. And then before that, it was like 91.5. So these are averages, but you can go look these things up. It's within, we're easily within half a mile an hour of where these things were. Now, baseball's going to get to 95.5 on the average fastball.
The difference between 92 and 94, by the way, is immense.
It's ridiculous.
It doesn't sound like a lot, but
it's ridiculous.
Seeing 92 compared to 94 is a world of difference.
It's insane.
I remember the first time
it's
I saw it.
So fast, and the velocity per second that you lose versus when you're watching it. And people don't understand it. The average baseball fan, I need you to understand something. 94 miles an hour is something you cannot see, okay? So when you're angry at the screen, watching a Phillies game, a Yankees game, a Mets game, a Braves game, West Coast game, I don't care what time you're watching it. A college baseball game, because now those guys are throwing 94, 95, and most of those guys, and a lot of the guys at the Power 5 level are up to 97, 98. That being said, you can't see the baseball, guys. You're only seeing it because the camera on ESPN or the Big Ten Network or on Fox makes it so that you can see the ball.
Yeah.
Because of the angles and the distance the angle creates for you. You can't see it in the box. So when you're angry at Bryce Harper or you're angry at Aaron Judge for missing the 100-mile-an-hour fastball, please give him some slack.
Oh, and then, by the way, they're throwing 92-mile-an-hour sliders on top of that.
Throwing 92-mile-an-hour sliders that are moving about 15 to 18 inches. You can't see it.
So, guys,
there's no way you're going to see it.
I challenge you to hit 94 without any other pitches coming.
Yes. And so, but then even at, running after a guy like Tyreek Hill, who's running a 4.2.
Oh, my goodness.
Right? Which I look at them. I look at football. I think football does have some of the best. You know how baseball, I think some of the metrics are outdated. A 60-yard dash shouldn't even exist.
Yeah.
The 60-yard dash doesn't mean anything, right? From a building the metric standpoint, exit velocity. Once you get to a certain level of exit velocity, it actually does not matter, right? So, especially at the younger age group, it'll matter if you're 16, you're hitting 100 miles an hour exit velo.
Yeah.
That now, from a launch angle perspective, from the equation that we can build, you can hit more home runs than other people. But if you're 12 years old and you're hitting the ball hard, you know what it looks like, right? So that's what. So what are the metrics? My question to you would be, what are the metrics in MMA? Are there any metrics in MMA?
That's a great question. I don't know that there is any metrics. You could do punching power, but at the end of the day,
and it's reach, reach.
Reach, yes, but if you don't understand distance management, reach means nothing.
Yeah.
You can. Demetrius Johnson will outbox 6'3" guys with long arms if they don't know what they're doing.
Right.
With ease, might I add.
Right.
So
it's interesting.
I don't know reach really. It's cool. It's cool to have. That's just being naturally gifted to throw 90 and not having to lift weights or do anything like that.
Right.
It's cool, but if you aren't working on it and working how to use it, then what does it really matter?
Right.
So,
right.
I mean, the only thing that I would say is punching power, kicking power. We all know.
And how do you measure that though? Is it
a force?
There's
bags with force.
Equation, yeah.
Yeah. They calculated Francis Ngannou's, and there's that viral clip of Dana White reading off something about how hard he hits. He hits like a Ford truck going 60 miles an hour or something.
But see, that even doesn't make any sense because he's never in a position in a fight to be able to just wind up and throw the hardest punch.
Right.
It's rare that you're ever going to be able to do that. So, guys usually get, I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong, but when I watch it, guys usually get knocked out from not seeing something happen.
It's
right?
always the punches you don't see.
Yeah, it's the punch you
always.
don't see, or the kick you didn't see. But it wasn't because he wound up and you didn't see it, right? So like him being able to say that he punches like a truck doesn't really give any positive metrics in his favor outside of he just punches really hard.
Yeah.
It's like, but there's guys who punch hard and lose, right? There's guys who don't punch hard and win. So I think that would be a really interesting thing to see if they ever get analytical with the sport.
I feel it's very hard to, at least on the striking
Which is why
side.
I think people love it.
Yeah. Like, I mean, in the grappling department, we have the NCAA national champions as a metric. Like, if you're an NCAA national champion in wrestling Division I, you're going to have a lot better time transitioning to MMA than someone who's never wrestled.
Right.
It's just a fact. You just understand the human body, how to manipulate it. So once you throw on that striking and you mix the two, you're already 90% ahead of everybody else. So I would say that's a metric. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, Judo black belt. These things are metrics that prove you have accolades and you're good in a certain field.
Right.
But like punching power and kicking power is great if you can use it.
Right.
Like if you're just
right.
winding up, like you said, good luck.
Right. No, that's the truth. And so, but that, I guess, makes a lot more sense to me is that, okay, if this guy's a black belt in jiu-jitsu, this guy is a, Muay Thai world champion. Now, I guess you can see that the metrics are, he's really, really good at this. But, like, that's what's so tough about other sports is, like, you could run a 6'5", throw 100 in baseball, and you still not be good.
Yeah,
right?
it's the
you
same
could be
thing.
talented. You could be talented.
Yeah.
But you may not have the heart. You may not have all the other things. You might have the skill or the talent to be able to do something, but not the full-blown execution. And so
it's a different than having accolades and being able to execute. Like, just like you said, there's master of sport sambo champions in Dagestan that come into the UFC and get knocked out in 3 straight fights and they're gone.
Right.
So like
right.
accolades are great, metrics are great.
For sure.
Execution is another story.
Yeah. Well, we executed this today.
Yeah, I don't even know how long we're at right now.
This has been fun, man.
I hope the cameras are rolling.
I hope they're still rolling as well.
I know the middle
we gotta
one's
figure that one out.
That one's
but
not rolling, I know for a fact. So I hope that and that are rolling.
I hope so too.
We're good.
But this was good, man.
This was fun.
This
I hope
was good.
If everything works out, we got video podcasts coming for you guys.
Let's go. That was a puncher's chance. Puncher's chance.
Episode 4. That was 4.
It's got to be 4. I feel like we've done like 5.
Yeah.
I might be ahead of you. You're going to get 5 soon.
We'll see you guys. That's it.